Here we're going to have a little look at some simultaneous equations that include a quadratic. In order to solve these, we can't use stop, our normal method. We have to change it so that we either only have x's or only have y's in our equation. To do that, we need to rearrange one of these equations, and it's going to be easier to do that with the bottom equation. So what I'm going to aim to do is rearrange that equation so that I know what y equals. So in order to get y on its own, I need to get rid of the x. So therefore I need to do the opposites. So the opposite of plusing x is taking away x. So then I do that to both sides and I end up with y equals 6 minus x. Now that I know what y is in terms of x, I can substitute that in to my top equation. So my top equation is x squared plus y squared equals 20. And my aim was to either have only x's or only y's. So I'm going to change that so that there are only x's, and I'm going to swap y for this equivalent sum of 6 minus x, because I know that they are equal over here. So then if I do that, I get x squared plus 6 minus x, and it's important that you put that in brackets, all squared, because it was y squared, equals 20. Now what's important to notice here is that in order to expand those brackets, I need to use FOIL, because it actually means that we have got x squared still at the front, plus 6 minus x, all squared, which means times by itself, so it's been times by another 6 minus x. So like I said, we're going to use FOIL then to expand these. So to begin with, I'm just going to bring down that x squared again, and then start to use FOIL here. So I have the firsts, 6 times 6, which gives me 36. And then the outsides, which is 6 times minus x, which will give me minus 6x. And then the inside, which is minus x times 6. So that will give me minus 6x again. And then finally, minus x times minus x. Now don't forget, a minus times a minus gives me a plus. So that's going to be a plus. And then x times x is x squared. Okay, now, seems that I've made this a lot more complicated. However, all I need to do now is collect the like terms and slightly rearrange this. So, to begin with, I'm going to get all my x squareds together. So I've got an x squared here and another plus x squared here. Remember, when you're circling like terms, you have to have the sign in front of it. So we have x squared plus another x squared, which gives me 2x squared. And then I have minus 6x minus another 6x. So if we think of temperature here, if it was minus 6 outside and it got 6 degrees colder, that would mean that it would be minus 12x. And then on the end there, we have our numbers. So the only number I have is here, on this side of the equals. So I therefore have to plus 36, and that equals 20. Okay, so now what's really important is we're starting to get to the point where we've got a quadratic here, but in order to solve quadratics, it's important that we set them equal to 0. So in order to get this equal to 0, I'm going to need to get rid of this 20 over here. I'm going to do that by taking away 20 from both sides. So when I've taken away 20 from both sides, that will give me 36 take away 20, that's 16. And then 20 take away 20, that'll give me nothing. So now I'm at the point where I have my quadratic. So I'm just going to turn over so I get more space here. And I've just written down the quadratic again over here. So now that I've got my quadratic, with it having a 2 in front of the x squared, that means it's quite tricky to factorise. But lucky for us, 2 goes into each part, so I can actually just divide this whole equation by 2 to get myself a simpler quadratic to factorise. So I get x squared, and then half of the 12x would give me 6x, and half of the 16 would give me 8. Okay, now I've got my quadratic. A couple of ways to solve this, but today we're going to use factorising. So to factorise this, I need to find two things that times together to give me 8, but add together to give me minus 6. Now I know this is going to be in two sets of brackets with an x at the front of both. So times together to give me 8, add together to give me minus 6, well that will be minus 4 and minus 2. Minus 4 times minus 2 gives me plus 8. Minus 4, take away another 2, gives me minus 6. Okay, so to actually solve this, I need to set each bracket equal to 0. So I'll get x minus 4 equals 0 and x minus 2 equals 0. So something, take away 4 gives me nothing, well then x must be 4 then. And something, take away 2 gives me nothing, well x must be 2. Now, although we've done lots of work already so far, we haven't actually got our final answer yet, because I've got my x values, but I now need to find my y values. I'm going to get my y values by substituting the x values into the easiest equation. So here I have x plus y equals 6. So I'm going to write that down. So I've got x plus y equals 6. But I now know that x is 4. So x plus 4, plus y gives me 6. So therefore, 4 plus something gives me 6. Y must be 2. So I now know when x is 4, y is equal to 2. Then again, the same thing, I'm going to substitute it into the same equation, x plus y equals 6. This time I know my x value was 2, so I get 2 plus y equals 6. Well, that means then when x is 2, I need to plus 4, which will give me 6. So y must be 4 in this case. And they are my two sets of answers. So my final answers for that equation are when x equals 4, y equals 2, and then when x equals 2, y equals 4.